So one thing I wanted to mention before I jump too much into stats is just address something that I read about a lot online, which is people saying, basically, hey, what's the correct character build? What's the best character build? How should I do it? And if you want to do that, I think that's okay. You can play this game however you like, but I think you're kind of robbing yourself of a lot of fun when you do that. I think what's a lot more fun is to build the character any way you want. If you want to have a mage, have a mage. If you want to have a sword and shield soldier, go for it. If you want to do like a rogue that's quick on their feet and uses a bow, go for it. But then when you decide on that, you still go online and people are like, well, here's, like, when you're level 14, put your stat into strength. When you're level 15, put one into dexterity. And I think that if you follow a blueprint like that, you are missing out. I think the real fun is going, oh, what do I need right now? What do I want right now? Oh, I need a bit more strength to wield that sword. Oh, go ahead and put something in strength. You don't have to do what some stranger on the internet says about how you should level up. So what I want to do is just tell you how the stats work, what you can level up and what that does, and the rest of the stats of the game, and then you can decide for yourself. Here's what I want to do. I think you'll have a lot more fun that way. So after you defeat the first boss, you talk to this bald kid up at the top of the Nexus, and then you find the lady in black. And she is how you upgrade your stats. What you do is you cash in your souls, basically, to level up. You also use your souls to buy items, repair your items, things like that if you like. But if you pick Seek Soul Power, then it shows you, if you can see up at the top left, your soul level, how many souls you have, and souls required for the next level. Obviously, my level is really high, and it costs a lot of souls to level up. And then you pick these stats and decide what you want to do with all your souls. What should you do? Well, I'll try my best to explain. And as I said before, there's not really a wrong answer here. I want to point out that pretty much anything you put stats into, if you look at the top right, your defense is going to go up. So you don't really have to think about that as far as making your choice. It will always go up no matter what. So what does each one of these things do? So Vitality gives you more hit points. Oh, I could use more hit points. I can make more mistakes if I have more hit points. Excellent. It also increases your item burden. That's sort of a relic of old games. It's how many things you can carry on your person. The newer Souls games just let you carry as much as you want. The important part is how much you can be holding, like equipping, like how heavy is the sword and shield you want to hold. That's something different. That's your equip burden. Item burden is how big your inventory can be. So mostly if you're doing Vitality, it's going to be for the hit points. You would be bananas to get Vitality solely to increase your item burden. Intelligence, you can see at the bottom there, it says increases maximum magic points and magic memory. So you get more mana basically. How magic memory works, you can see in the bottom right, it says memory, magic memory, and miracle memory. It's essentially a way to equip spells. You might have learned 15 different spells, but you can actually only equip a few at a time. And how many magical memory slots you have is what manages that. Probably might want to consider that towards the start if you're going for a magic build, but intelligence is mostly going to be around increasing how much mana you have. Now endurance, as you can see, enhances stamina, equip burden, and some resistances. So it increases your bleed and poison resistances slightly. Okay, that's a nice perk. The main things you're probably going to be noticing is that it gives you more stamina and more equip burden. More stamina, hey, game's about stamina management, the more the better, right? You can block more, you can attack more, you can roll more before you run out. Great. That's a solid choice for putting stats into if you're planning on just normal sword and shield combat. Equip burden is another major consideration. The higher the equip burden, the more you can equip. And that can be slightly more complicated than it sounds. Say you want to wear some armor that weighs 56 pounds. I can't wear it right now, but I can now. Okay, that's great. But also how the game works is the speed of your rolling depends on how much stuff you're wearing. You can see that I can roll pretty quick right now. That's because my equip burden, where is that? Kind of in the middle. it says equip burden is less than 50%. So my max equip burden is 53. Half of that is what, like 26 and a half? So I'm below that. Since my equip burden is below half, I can roll quickly. Now, if my equip burden was more than half, let's say I equip something a bit heavier. Now you can see that it's 29 and a half. Okay, that's more than 50% of my max equip burden, so I'm gonna roll slow. That's the game's way of trying to indicate, well, yeah, if you're wearing and holding tons of stuff, you're not gonna be as nimble. So if you're playing this game and I was explaining to you rolling and you're like, whoa, my character doesn't roll that fast. It rolls slow like this. All right, well then it's probably due to your equip burden and you're over half full on that. So if you want to be able to roll fast, you can change what you're wielding, you can change what you're wearing, wear something lighter, and then you'll be quick on your feet again. Next up is strength and dexterity. Now they might work a little differently than you think. They work a little bit differently than in many RPGs. So strength isn't just like you're going to do more damage, but rather there are certain weapons that scale to strength, and I'll explain what that means in just a moment. But basically, for that weapon, the higher your strength, the more damage you will do. You can see in my case it says my left-handed weapon number 1 will go from doing 144 to 147 because of the stats I'm putting into strength. It's getting stronger because the weapon I'm using scales well with strength. Weapons that do better with strength tend to be normal swords, big heavy weapons, a big club, something like that. Dexterity is weapons that are a bit faster, a katana, a dagger, things like that. And if you put points into there, if the weapon scales with dexterity, it will get stronger. You can see my right weapon number 2. It's going to do a teensy bit more damage because I'm putting points into dexterity. Magic, it says raises magic power. You can see there at the bottom in the middle. It's sort of a generic number. I'm sure it goes into some algorithm, but basically it makes your spells do more damage. There's also some weapons that scale with magic. I'm using a weapon that scales with magic that does 358, can get up to 360. If I had really low magic stat, this weapon would do more like 250, but it's doing that much damage because I have so many points put into magic and it scales well with magic. Faith is pretty similar. It makes so your miracles are more effective if it's healing or if it's dealing damage. Magic and faith are pretty similar in those ways. Some weapons and items require faith or will scale well with faith. And last up is luck. This is still in the era of video games where luck was basically pointless. It's a bit more useful in some more modern games. I think it's pretty good in Fallout 4, for example. What luck does in this game is it increases your plague resistance. Okay, that's great. There's only maybe one place in the game with plague. But really what it does is it boosts your item discovery. So enemies are more likely to drop items. Okay, that's not bad. I don't know of any builds that do really good around this other than that there's one weapon that scales super good with luck, but most likely you're probably not going to put too many stats into there. So for the rest of the stat information, I'm going to go to a slightly different screen. It's a little convoluted in this game, to be honest. You push the options button, or what on the PS5 just has 3 horizontal lines. And you can pick what you've got here. This is what you have equipped. If you had a crossbow or a bow and arrow, that stuff goes here. You've got your rings. So if I pick a sword, or rather something I'm holding in my hands, in the bottom right, you can see if you push triangle, it'll switch what it shows you in that particular menu. And if you push square, it will change what it shows you in this larger subscreen. There's kind of 3 different screens. One is it's showing you the stats of that weapon. The next is it's got a little bit of extra information. I'm mostly interested in this screen. And you can have that screen open and then switch your weapons, which is pretty convenient for comparing them. So what you may want to do is pull up this menu, push square to look at the stats, then push triangle. Those stats aren't going to change, so push triangle again, and now you can see a lot of important information. So right now I've got this Crescent Falchion +5 equipped. What if I wanted to use the Uchi Katana? Well, I can see pretty easily what will change over there on the right. The katana weighs a bit more, so my equip burden is going up. You can see over there on the right in the middle, it goes from 24.5 to 28.3. And it's red saying that's worse. In the bottom right, it says attack power of right-hand weapon number 1. Right now it's doing 358. If I were to change to the Uchi Katana, it would go down to 105. Ooh, it's in red, meaning it's worse. So that's a kind of a quick reference there. So in this main screen in the middle, it has a ton of information. Some of it's kind of confusing. So it says Crescent Falchion plus 5 does slash damage. So there's 3 main types of damage: slash, bash, and pierce. Slashing is like a sword cutting across something, and that's pretty good against unarmored opponents. Like, it would be good for cutting fleshy stuff. Bash is maybe something like a mace. It's good for crushing armor or monsters covered in armor. Or like a skeleton, it's good at crushing the bones. And pierce, it's not super clear, but it's kind of a bit of both. It also is good against armor. Some weapons kind of do both, like this dragon longsword. Its normal attack does slashing damage, and then its strong attack, its R2 attack, lunges forward and it does pierce damage. So you could go about the game equipping different kinds of damaging weapons and then switch depending on the enemy. I don't really do that. You could do that, but what I found is you'll probably just gonna find a weapon, make it good, and then just deal with the fact that certain enemies are more difficult. Maybe if you like using a slashing weapon, it's slightly more difficult to get at an enemy wearing lots of armor. But you could switch as the case arises. The next thing down that says attack power, that's pretty straightforward. Weapons do physical, magical, or fire attack. I'll explain that slightly more in a minute. Below that, additional effects. Those are things that this weapon does. That blood is bleeding, the bleeding effect. Over to the right with the skull is poison, and then to the right is plague, and then honestly, I don't remember what that last one is. Who cares? So they all work pretty similar, actually. When you do enough bleeding or poison or plague damage, it inflicts that status on an enemy, or if an enemy can do that to you. And they basically all drain your health a bit over time unless you use an item to heal it. Now, the attribute bonus is what I mean by weapon might scale. What that means is a weapon will work better or do more damage the more stats, the more points you have in the relevant stats. So that arm is strength, the hand is dexterity, that blue thing is magic, and then the star is faith. So this weapon has an A scale ranking with magic. The worst ranking is E, and then D, C, B, A, and then S is the highest. So the higher that letter, the more points you have in that stat, the stronger it is, the more damage it will do. So this dragon longsword doesn't scale with anything. It will always basically be that strong unless I upgrade it with stones. This crisp blade, it gets a bit better with strength, a teeny bit better with dexterity, quite a bit better if I have points in magic. Penetrating blade, a little bit with strength and dexterity. Now those scaling things can improve as well over time. That's why this one's level A. So you might go, okay, I really love this mace. It requires faith. It gets really strong if I could put points into faith. You could sort of start to focus your character around using that weapon and getting more faith. The attribute requirements is saying you have to have these stats to use this weapon. Now you can technically equip a weapon if you don't have good enough stats, like this penetrating sword, and you'll get this warning that's like, hey, you don't have good enough stats, it's not going to be very good. Okay, I'm going to do it anyway. Now it should do a ton of damage, but it actually is only going to do 39. Why? I'm not strong enough or have enough dexterity to use this. So if I actually try to use it, it's like, it's going to be like kind of slow. It looks like it's actually not too bad in this case, but it does a lot less damage. So you can't just use whatever. You have to have the attribute requirements met. One other thing worth mentioning is that the game tries to break down what that scaling bonus is, by the way. So in this case, it says it does 112 physical attack plus 0. It's not getting anything extra from scaling. It does 119 magical attack. Oh, and it scales well with magic, and you have 50 points in magic. It's going to do an extra 128. So that weapon's doing a lot of extra damage because of that scaling bonus. This weapon would normally do 20 normal. I'm getting a slight bonus from strength and dexterity. It normally does 62 magic, and I'm getting a 47 points of damage bonus because of the magic. That's how that's breaking down. And the last thing I want to focus on with stats is how shields work. Whoops, just unequipped it. So actually, let's equip this one first. So it says in this main screen over there on the sort of in the middle towards the top on the right, durability, that's how long it'll last, weight, how heavy it is, and damage percent reduction. So what this means is how much damage reduction this shield does. So it will absorb, this shield will absorb 70% of physical damage. So if you run around with this shield, which is pretty bad, it's not even going to block all the damage. A guy hits you, you're still going to take 30% of that damage. Not very good. It blocks 30% of magical damage, just 10% of fire, and it has a guard break of 35. I'll explain that in a minute. Now, why might I use this dark silver shield? Well, wow, it blocks all physical damage coming in and all magical damage coming in. That's pretty sweet. If one of those mind flayers shoots a blue soul ray at me, this will just totally block it. There's some bosses that they use lots of magical attacks. This will block all of it. Excellent. It's the same reason you might want to carry around something like this large brushwood shield, although it's insanely heavy. It blocks 100% of fire damage. Pretty good. I like to use this steel shield though, because it's got the standard 100% physical damage protection, but it also has excellent guard break. What guard break is it's how well this shield absorbs blows. So there's some algorithm, you can't tell what it is, but when an enemy hits your shield, it takes away a certain amount of stamina. Now, the higher the guard break, the less stamina will go away. So there's some enemies that hit you really, really hard, and they'll just make you recoil. All your stamina will run out. You'll still take damage, but that doesn't happen if you've got high enough stamina and a high enough guard break. This shield has a guard break of 82, which is insanely high, and it can block basically anything, including large bosses will hit it really hard, and you can block it. For my preferred playstyle, that's what I like. I like a shield with super high guard break. I like to be kind of nimble, and my sacrifice is I wear sort of light armor. So if I get hit, it still does a lot of damage, but I do a lot of hiding behind this huge shield with tons of guard break. I forgot to mention that in this game, you actually cannot upgrade your armor, but you can upgrade your weapons and shields. You do that with these stones that you'll find. There's a character, old crotchety guy in the Nexus, who can upgrade your weapons and shields with stones. And slightly later in the game, you'll find another blacksmith who can do things even more interesting, like add magic or fire effects to your weapons and things like that. To do that, you need to get this elevator going. I'm pretty sure you'll figure out how to do that when you're about 2/3 of the way through this level. So you can, of course, design your character any way you like. You can't really screw this up. I mean, if you're playing tons of multiplayer, maybe you'll come across some player with super curated stats, but if you're playing single player and oh darn, I put 2 extra points into strength that I didn't mean to. Oh well, just put them in next 2 levels. You might need to go get a few souls, but that's not really a huge deal. Well, I recorded the voiceover for this video while I was playing. When I do that, I tend to forget things or stutter or explain things in a weird way. So if something doesn't make sense or if I just forgot to mention something, please feel free to leave a comment. My channel's not very big at all, so I probably will see your comment and get back to you. I hope you enjoy playing.